There are three major objectives of this video. The first is to provide accurate, detailed, technical information about how to do the major exercises that work the larger muscular functions of the human body. The second objective of this videotape is to make it possible to streamline our certification process, particularly to level 1, by providing these tapes, which may be reviewed over and over for detail. We're hoping will save not only the administrator of the test, but also the subject taking the test, so that they can be better prepared. The third major objective of this video is to also give people alternatives from the most ideal equipment that we have. In other words, to use conventional exercises, barbell equipment, and even some manual or time static type exercises that people can do on the road when they're away on vacation or on business trips. Of course, this video has limitations. It will not replace the need for many instructors who want to sharpen their skills to get with one of the SuperSlow certified masters, or with our people here in Florida to have an internship and go through workouts, as well as see other workouts being supervised, to learn how to correct many of the discrepancies seen in the tape. So here are the 10 requirements of full range exercise as Arthur Jones would have presented. As I present the 10 requirements of full range exercise here, I am going to do it briefly, just so the viewer can know what we're referring to. For level 2 certification, I would expect it to be presented by the examinee in such a way that he explained each of the requirements in full detail. One, and the most fundamental requirement, is rotary resistance. I would prefer to say rotary form movement, but that's not the way it was usually stated. Second is direct resistance, and this refers to placing the resistance directly on that part of the body moved by the muscle you're trying to work. Variable resistance. After all, the resistance must vary because it's weaker or stronger in different areas, positions, and it must vary in a balanced way, balanced to its needs. And fifth is positive work. Positive work potential. Of course, everything has that, or most everything has that. 6 is negative work. 7 is stretching. 8 is free stretching. 9 is resistance. I'll spell out completely. And the position of full muscular contraction. And the 10th one was always stated as his opinion. He claimed that the first 9 were were solid, that they were not disputable, but the 10th one might be. And he stated it or phrased it as an unrestricted speed of movement. So that's what those 10 requirements are. And when we say that a simple single axis rotary form exercise movement is full range, we're saying they have all 10 of these requirements. If one of the requirements is missing, it is said not to be full range. In other words, if you have a compound movement and it is linear, well, you certainly don't have this. You don't have this most of the time. You do not have resistance in the position of a full motion contraction with a pushing movement. And you might be missing one of the others depending on the movement. This next topic has to do with placing the subject to be exercised in the right location in the exercise machine. It goes off into two areas. One is alignment, the other is positioning. And what I want to do here is go pretty fundamental on you so that we structure and organize how you think about this. Now, you already may know how to position someone in a compound exercise or align someone in a rotary machine. But doing it may have become an automatic thing and you don't remember the background as to why you do it the way you do it. And I want to take you back there. Simple has several synonyms or close meanings. Maybe not perfect synonyms. It equates with having a single axis of rotation. It also equates with the activity, or the movement, I should say, being rotary form. And also indicates that it satisfies the requirements for full range exercise. Now, the concept of full range exercise is a concept by Arthur Jones. And although it's not exactly accurate, I want us to pretend that it is valid for a moment. Some of the points of the 10 requirements of full range exercise are valid and some are not. But from a historical standpoint and from a standpoint of putting all this together, it's important to pretend that it's all valid for the moment. So simple equates with the 10 requirements of full range exercise. We'll just say we can call them full range. It's more complete and accurate to state here that a rotational or single joint movement is potentially full range. It is not necessarily satisfying all of the factors of full range exercise. Now, the other type of movement are compound movements. And they are multiple axes. And they are more or less linear form. Linear form. And because they do not satisfy all of the requirements of full range, they cannot be full range. Now, taking those two groups of movements, simple single axis rotary form movements require alignment. This means that you are going to place the axis, rotating axis of the body on the rotating axis of the machine. And we will detail that in a moment. Compound movements break off into two other subcategories. One is pushing movements. The other is pulling movements. And they're quite easy to assess. Basically, in a compound pushing movement, you want to get as close as is reasonably possible to the movement arm so that you have adequate or a maximum range of motion. The other, the pulling movements, you want to get as far away from the movement arm as possible so you have maximum range of motion. Now, again, I said reasonably. You don't want to get so close to a pushing movement, like in a leg press, that you're congesting the belly, turning the pelvis up, causing some problems. But you do want, within reason, to have it provide as much range of motion as possible. Now, we're going to look at the simple single axis rotational movements in a little more detail with an exercise performed on an adduction machine. And that will become more apparent as we go with that. Colleen, bear with me here because we're going to go over quite a bit of tedium, but once you know what to do in this Med-X leg press, you're going to know 80% of what you need to do on all the other exercises. So first of all, we're going to set the end position of this exercise. So go to put your feet up there on that pedal. It's got a very light weight on it. It may actually move away from you, so don't be startled by that. When you gap one of the weight stacks on one side, you will leave some slack in the foot pedal. Always warn the subject that as you push them forward, you may take up that slack with a little bit of movement as well as a crashing sound, and to tell them not to be startled by that. I believe we've already mentioned that this is a Med-X leg press in which we've removed the left weight stack so that you can view the body better. Another point sort of related to that might not be obvious is that the instructor should normally stand on the left side of the subject because that's where the controls are. Of course, that's not very practical here because there's no left weight stack, but if it were in place, the instructor would at first use only the left weight stack as he was positioning the subject into the machine, rather than having to reach across to the right weight stack. I'm going to move you a little closer here. Now, very slowly push that out, and I want to see where the end of the stroke is. Okay, I may need to give you a little bit more stroke. So come on back. Back the seat up just a little bit. You can leave your feet up there. Move your heels down to about an inch from the bottom of that pedal. Okay, very slowly push that out. Good. That's about right. Now, you sort of sunk your butt back into that angle of the seat, right? Now I'm going to bring the shoulder pads just to where they touch your shoulders, not real tight. Now we've set the end position. We'll record that for you. Now, bring the pedal back toward you, and we'll set the beginning position. Now I'm going to pull this back toward you a little bit, and you tell me when your pelvis starts turning up in the seat, or when your tummy becomes too congested.
Okay.
About right there? Okay. That should be the beginning position. Now, go ahead and push that out. And stay out there. And I'm going to go to the other side and explain some things to you. Now, a couple of concepts I want you to know. The main one is that this is referred to as the end point. The end point is a position just before your knees straighten. You can't quite straighten your knees, can you?
No.
We have the machine run out to the stops just before they straighten. Now, if you really wanted to straighten your knees, you really bear down hard on this, you could do it. But I don't want you to. You would do it because you would apply enough force that you would sink back into that upholstery and the materials in the machine would compress. But you don't want to do that. And here's why. First category reason has to do with safety. Once your thighs become fatigued, the different muscles will war against one another and quiver, and you might suddenly lock your knees backwards and hurt them. Worse than that is that most people have one leg a little shorter than the other. And that shorter leg will lock first, twist your pelvis, and hurt your back. So even if you get to the point where you can straighten your knees, you don't want to. You want to at least volitionally control that, and eventually the machine will not prevent you from it. It just sort of will remind you. The other category of reason why we do not want to straighten the knees has to do with exercise. Pretend that this finger is your upper leg bone, and this is the other finger being your lower leg. Between these two bones are the knees, and when the knee or knees straighten, the two bones are aligned. At that position, other than some minor balancing being performed by the muscles, the bones are supporting everything. Therefore, the muscles are doing practically nothing. Therefore, there is no exercise. This is why conventional activities such as walking and running and other things are not really exercise. It also explains why the muscles are not fatigued and that you can continue doing them forever. Now, I showed you about the end point so that I could show you something else. So I'm going to step off of here, and I want you to slowly set that down. Okay, can you see this, Colleen?
Yes.
Schematically, consider this point to be the end point that we just discussed. And here's where you are right now. You're going to take 10 seconds to go between those 2 points. In other words, to perform the positive from the bottom out to the end point. This arrow represents the 10-second positive. And this dotted portion, upside down U, is the upper turnaround. It is the same speed as the positive and overlaps with it as well. Of course, as we noted the end point, in this particular case, as you're doing the exercise, you're not really going to stop out there as when we defined end point. You're sort of just going to pass through it, anticipating approaching it, turning around slowly. And once you're definitely headed down, not during the upper turnaround, but after you have made the turn, you may want to go slightly faster on the way down, but you do not want to abruptly get faster, nor do you want it to get so fast that it becomes a free fall. But it's going to go a little faster, slightly maybe. And then down here near the bottom, you're going to have to start slowing down again, lest you slam into the bottom. So you're going to come down here, barely touch the bottom, barely start the next one. Now all of this area down here is known as the lower turnaround, and I want to say a few special words about the lower turnaround. In a very general sense, this exercise is for your lower body. More specifically than that, it is for your legs. More specifically, yet again, it is for your buttocks. Your buttocks are the largest, strongest structures in the human body. Muscularly speaking, they have a greater overall effect, not only on the other muscles, but also on your general metabolism. Therefore, it is crucially important to us to try to keep that buttocks area loaded down in this lower turnaround. And we're going to do that
by following the 3 rules of the lower turnaround. Number 1, always bottom out. That means come all the way down and touch the weights using the full stroke that I have prescribed into your settings. Number 2, you do not want to unload it bottom out. Now, you're at bottom out right now, but you're not loaded. You're relaxed. When you're doing exercise, between successive repetitions, you want to come down and touch the weight so barely. In other words, you should be pushing on the pedal as hard as you can and still barely touch. Let off of the force as minimal as possible to still touch the bottom. And rule number 3 is that you do not want to fire out of the bottom out. On that next repetition, you want to squeeze off that next repetition like squeezing the shutter on a fine camera. It should not fire out. It should not jump. In other words, another way to look at it is you should try to be sneaky about it. You should try to start the next repetition in a way that you're trying to hide the actual beginning of commencement from me. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to try some practice repetitions, but I want to point out one inconsistency that you may have picked up from what I've just said. I mentioned earlier that this exercise was primarily for your buttocks. However, if you've done several repetitions, you're not going to feel your buttocks so much, or most people will not. They're going to feel somewhere else. They're going to feel their frontal thighs. Now, I wonder why that might be so. We believe it is because your thighs are merely more sensitive. Your buttocks are insensitive. And although your buttocks are doing probably 80% of the work in this exercise, they're not going to feel it until you become sensitized in that area and you learn to feel it. And your thighs will probably be screaming simply because they're a very sensitive area. But try to go through that. Now let's do some practice repetitions. I want you to hang your hands off of here. Pretend your fingers are just like coat hangers. You're not really going to grip it. You're just going to hang off of it. And yes, we've cut away the left side of this machine so the camera can see what you're doing. And we'll try to go on here. I'm going to give you a head pad. Put your head back. I don't want that neck extended. Very slowly start pushing that out. If I've put your feet at the right height, it should not cause any severe tension in your ankles or shins. Barely touch, barely start. Just right. Now, in the next repetition, I'm going to give you a cadence count. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, halfway, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's pretty much right on. Now when you touch at the bottom out, learn to barely tip the edge of one plate with this Medix machine. That was good. The plates come down and they don't touch perfectly flat. Usually one side will tip before the rest of the plate touches. You'd like to hear a click, but not the second clunk. That was good. It clicked, but did not clunk. Barely starting out. Make the upper turnaround just a little more gradual. A little bump involved there. Barely touch. Yeah. Now, as this gets more difficult, think butt. That's where the real strength comes from, no matter what those thighs are telling you. And breathe more. And even if you think you can't go on, believe that you're being effective. Barely touch, barely start. Now that's the last repetition we're going to do, but touch at the bottom as though you're going to do another one. Change nothing. And then don't do another one. Exactly right. Now, I'm going to get you out of here. Ball there. Barely touch. Yeah. Now, as this gets more difficult, think butt. That's where the real strength comes from, no matter what those thighs are telling you. And breathe more. And even if you think you can't go on, believe that you're being effective. Barely touch, barely start. Now that's the last repetition we're going to do, but touch at the bottom as though you're going to do another one. Change nothing. And then don't do another one. Exactly right. Now, I'm going to get you out of here.
Be careful here to warn the client that they could hit their feet on the rail as their feet might fall passively off of the foot pedal.
Now, I'm going to turn you. I'm going to put my hand on that knee, and I want you to grab my left wrist.
Here, the subject should grip my left wrist in order that as I turn her, she does not hurt her shoulder, which would have happened or could have happened if she would naturally have left her hand where it was on the upper support to the right. Here you see Colleen with the seat too close to the foot pedal. She can't straighten her legs enough. We'll adjust that. Now, let's see what we have. She can straighten, oops, we can straighten them a little too far. And you notice she can straighten this one before the other and then the two. I really don't like to see this. And on this machine, different from the SuperSlow leg press, you have to volitionally control that from happening. You've got to use some intelligence there. Now, let's see what happens here. That looks pretty good. You still can't do a real squeeze on this machine because the upholstery gives too much. This is an acceptable place to put the hands on the Med-X. It's the only place you can put it on the SuperSlow machine, but I would prefer not to put it there. I absolutely don't want the hands here in the hip angle because it congests. Keep the hands out of the hip angle. Put them either to the side, or if you've got the Med-X machine, hang them from above, which you'll see here in a minute. Yes, putting the hands down on those handles would certainly be better than putting them in the hip angle. Now this is ideal if you can do it in the design of the machine, to hang the hands here. Now realize she's not gripping, she's just using her fingers like hooks, like a coat hanger. She's just hanging off of there. Her arms are perfectly relaxed.
Place the feet on the foot pedal in a position where the feet are roughly parallel and the inside of the sole of the shoe is roughly aligned with the inside line of that non-skid material. Now here you see the feet sort of splayed out. We don't want that. In some cases you may have to, with some people with some weird knees. Now she's putting her feet too far off the bottom, although they're still parallel. You want the heel